Well, of course, an idea evolves as well. You first want to fly like like a helicopter, probably earlier than that, like the hummingbird. That's something you can identify very early on. It does everything that you could possibly want to do as a human if you talk about free flight. Of course, you can't become a hummingbird, so the next best thing is to build a helicopter. And so my first effort was to design, when I was a teenager, to design and start building a helicopter. But helicopters are quite complex and not something that I ever was able to complete. So it was always this desire to be able to take off vertically and have that freedom that the hummingbird has or the helicopter has. But the helicopter's not really practical either. It's very hard to fly, it's cumbersome, it's noisy, it's large. There's many elements involved that prevent the helicopter from being every man's commuter vehicle. The Skycar is a combination helicopter, airplane, and for short periods of time at least, an automobile. But of course, why drive if you can fly? So it really would be used most often as something where you could get around much like you do with the automobile today, but in a much more free environment. Key to this vehicle is what we call Medusa. That's all of the incredibly complicated electronics in the back end of the vehicle. It's really the brains that flies it, because this really is a flying computer in that sense. It's all automated, so that the individuals using it is not really required to be very skillful. I think the thing that if the viewers viewing it, the thing that's probably most interesting from their point of view is that they look at a vehicle like this. I think that the first thing they're going to be concerned about is safety. Is this vehicle safe? And to answer that question, I have to say that we have our number one design criteria was safety, which is not an idle word for us. It means that we have 4 computers with voting systems that make sure if a computer fails, the other one backs it up. If that fails, another one backs it up. We have 8 engines, so that if you're sitting there and you lose an engine, and these are low probabilities this will happen, but certainly there is always that probability, and historically when that happens, it's all over for the vehicle and the people. But in our case, I've already flown this vehicle and lost an engine. I've flown the previous blue one and lost an engine during flight. No effect whatsoever. Land the vehicle. In the one case, I landed the vehicle. I didn't even know the engine wasn't running until it landed. Now we have instrumentation, so we know that ahead of time. But safety is such an extremely important factor in all of this. And so the reason this will be a success, assuming it'll be a success, and I believe it will because it'll have a great safety record. Then the next issue comes in cost. And of course, build enough of the vehicles. I have low-cost engines, the vehicle will be cheap. So if it's cheap, relatively inexpensive, if it's safe, and it's easy to fly, and it's very easy to fly because you don't really fly it. You get into it, you code in a number, it takes you to your destination, lands you. It's very surprisingly easy thing to do, quite frankly. Then you have everything. Easy to fly, inexpensive, and safe. This flew many, many times. This is where we did all our flying. In fact, most of the video that's out there, flights, are with this one here. We flew it over 200 times, never had an accident. Did lose an engine in one case, lost an ignition system in another case, right at takeoff, and had a carburetor fall off it on one time just as I was landing. But the beauty of it is there's always a single component. You lose an ignition system, you lose an engine. You lose a carburetor, you lose an engine, but you don't lose the vehicle. Yeah, this vehicle was this airframe you see here was actually built in the late 60s. But as the engines improved, of course, then we were able to put more and more powerful engines in. So the first engines were not able to lift it very high off the ground. But then we got the engines we now use are similar to the engines that are now used in the M400. Then we're able to fly this thing free from the ground and over some considerable distance. As we walk through the various approaches that one could use to do it, and you have one here, this is what we call a 5-nacelle. Actually, it's not even that. It's really it's a 6-nacelle because we have a lifting one here, the nose.
Does the nose create lift as well?
Well, everything on the vehicle creates lift at high speed. You know, the space shuttle comes in. If you look at the space shuttle or any of the vehicles, they hardly have any wings, but they fly very fast. And so a vehicle like this becomes quite efficient, but at very high speed. This one here would probably have to fly 150 miles an hour just to stay in the air. So it evolved, you know, it's always been trailing sort of power plants, because the key element in the Sky Car is a very powerful small engine. And so as I progressed and got more and more power of the engine, I got aircraft that became more and more like this M400 is today. And that's been a long time. Engines have evolved over the last 40 years in very dramatic ways, at least the type of engine I need. And the Sky Car has evolved dramatically in 40 years, pacing this development of the engine. And ultimately we end up developing our own engine. We got the patented principles of the Wankel engine and then modified them to make it work for our application. And that was key. And so we get, right now we're getting about 75 horsepower out of that little engine here, which is not much bigger than my fist. And then when you put it together, you're getting a total of 160 horsepower with the two of them. And that includes the starter motor, the water pump, the injection oil pump, the ignition system. Everything is included in a package that weighs about 100, actually less than 100 pounds. We're going to be putting our engine in that, in a vehicle like that, and then a second one is for small engines for the third world, where they'd be produced 100,000, perhaps as high as 5 million engines a year. Because remember, this is a four-stroke engine. That part of the world is all two-stroke, and the pollution and the health problems that are created in India and China and Taiwan, this engine has the capability of really taking that problem away completely. It is so simple. Even a two-stroke engine has 3 moving parts. We only have 2. We have an engine that's the simplest conceivable concept in the world. When I say we, of course, I'm going to be fair. Felix Wankel's engine, with some development work by us, has the ability to be simpler than a two-stroke and have all the attributes of the non-polluting or relatively non-polluting four-stroke engine. I think it's exciting. I mean, that's, to me, it's almost as exciting if we could get that to happen as building the damn Sky Car. Because you really could save, I mean, truly save millions of lives. And certainly lengthen the life of many millions of people. So this is exciting for us. This is a group from Taiwan that can produce that sort of numbers, literally millions of engines. And we have just, we're well in the way of signing an agreement with them. The engine sit right in that soundproof aluminum box there.
Right in here.
Right. Right there. You can see it. It's got lead coating on the inside, so you don't hear the engine. The engine is, it's a great deal of effort to silence it, so there's no engine noise there at all, really no engine noise. And then you have it running a generator, and the generator is either putting power to an electric motor that drives the wheels or charging a battery at the same time. A car like this can go 0 to 60 in under 6 seconds, so it's got sports car performance. At the same time, it's capable of 70 miles a gallon of gasoline, so it's got both ends of the spectrum. You know, it's kind of funny in a way, because I testified before Congress about a year and a half ago about transportation. They were looking, in theory, they were looking to the future, but they're really not. I think they were just grandstanding and being saying that they were looking. But let's assume that they had some at least vision of it. The attendance was very low, and most of the congressmen spent most of the time grandstanding and making their own speeches, so they went in the record. So the experts, so-called, who were there like myself, had 5 minutes, each of us, to talk. And each one of the congressmen would sit up and talk for half an hour about absolutely nothing to go on the record. It was pathetic. And Bruce Holmes, who's head of SATS, that's the Small Aircraft Transportation System, that's the highways that are going to come in the sky, and he's part of NASA's group supporting that. He came up to me afterwards and he said, you know, don't worry, it's just a matter of time. It's just going to get so bad one day that they're going to say, you know, why haven't we addressed this? We seem to have this major catastrophe of some sort. And really, transportation is an oncoming catastrophe. And when it happens, all of a sudden, magically, we'll have this new priority. And NASA, who's now in outer space and the budget's along with him, we have no money for aeronautics, will then become NACA again. This was an aeronautical organization that dealt with transportation. And that's, I think, going to be the consequence. Whether that's in 1, 2, 3, 10 years, Difficult to know. Well, the development of the aerospace, of course, is really critical to Skycar, and they're really quite well advanced. Again, much more advanced than most people would believe. Obviously, using GPS, but then correcting the accuracy of GPS with what they call geostationary satellites under the acronym WAS, which is wide area, corrections, and then they call it augmentation. And then they got LAS, which is the local area near airports. This gives GPS, in conjunction with these other technologies, tremendous accuracy. So you know where every vehicle is precisely within, theoretically, inches at all times. Once you have that, of course, theoretically, you now have order. You can now take and do something with that order. And we're very close to that. By the end of next year, we'll have LAS and WAS in place. GPS, of course, is in place and is being augmented with time. And then the issue is really a national commitment to go and set up an airway. But I can tell you, it's a hell of a lot cheaper to build a airway in the air than it is to get a right of way on the ground and pour concrete and then maintain it for the next 100 years. So you see highways are ceasing to be built in America. In the last 10 years, the miles traveled on the highway have gone up by 30%. The actual highways they've built have gone up by 2%. And I would say that's continued to decrease. So we won't see more highways. So what are we going to do with the next 30% growth over the next 10 years?
And this is your wind tunnel. Is this a new design in here now?
Yeah, it's a tunnel that I actually built when I was at the University of California initially, or let's say built. I had it built. I didn't build it. I had it built. Then the university wanted to get rid of it, so I took it and remodified it considerably. I changed the outlet and the inlet a lot, and it's a very good research tool. It was sort of a demonstration tool of the university. It is now a good research tool.
Is this the new, or is this the
That's
old?
the 6-passenger model in there. Yes. We just completed the aerodynamic work on that. That's more for military applications than civilian initially, but eventually I think as an air taxi it might be an excellent vehicle. It's much more evolutionary than revolutionary because it takes a long time. And as you say, there are many elements that make it a success. Electronics, both hardware and software, are important. This very powerful engine, new materials that weigh 1/3 the weight of steel but have the strength of steel, or perhaps quite a bit greater than steel in many cases. These are all important factors, and it's true. What happens is that you can follow the history of the Skycar and you can see the evolving of all these materials. But probably the most important single factor in where the Skycar is today in terms of its potential in the future is that enormous things have changed even in the last 10 years. I mean, we were the front page of some major newspapers 10 years ago and we got very little attention. But today we believe almost anything is possible technologically, number one. And number two, there's a definite need, identifiable need. And we know that that need is going to become even more important in the next 10 years. So here's something that can really solve an immediate problem and deal with a future problem that would be much worse. And that's very fortunate for us because it means that we can get the attention or start to get the attention that makes the Skycar a solution. It's true, I've been motivated to stay with this because after you've committed a great deal of time to anything like this, and you recognize that it is really got a value. It's not just my personal desire to fly, which was the motivator at the beginning, but it really does have a societal advantage. Then you say, gee, I really need to get this out. Even if I don't make money for it, although I would make sure that I made money for my stockholders, they more than deserve it. But even if I personally didn't make money with it, it would be still a great satisfaction to get out there and make this thing work and make everybody have one.
Flying through the air, side by side.